Okay, good morning. We are a little bit late, but that's expected. Every year is like this, but especially this year after this first emotional event in the morning. And this is the session that we normally have where we present some of the results of faculty members here at Tel Aviv University. And you can hear? Yeah, okay. And each year we choose a topic, and this year we chose the topic Breaking Barriers, a glimpse into our innovation ecosystem. And with me, a co-chair will be Stuart Feldman, and I will introduce him a little bit later. And all the speakers, they decided that they prefer to sit there because otherwise they'll have to break their neck in order to see what's happening up there. So we will allow them to do that. So, I once heard a variation of a famous saying, to innovate or not to innovate, that is not the question. And indeed, this is not the question. We all value innovation, but then what is the question? Well, we can ask what is innovation, we can ask what drives it, and we can also ask how can we embed innovation in the DNA of the organization. Now, we often hear about eureka moment, right? Newton sitting under the apple tree, and then he's seeing the apple falling down off the tree, and then he asks himself, why did it fall down and it didn't go up? And then he realizes that Earth attracted it, and he discovers the gravitational force. Then there is the other episode of Einstein sitting in the patent office in Zurich, or in Bern, and staring out through the window, and then he sees a man working on the roof of the building in front. And then he thinks what the person is going to feel if he's going to fall off the roof. By the way, luckily this didn't happen. And then he realizes that the man will feel weightless. And this was a crucial observation for his theory of relativity. And Einstein used to call this the happiest thought of my life. And there is another episode, Darwin sitting in his office, and suddenly he realizes that there is natural selection. But in fact, we do know the discoveries are not really being made like this. There are long incubation periods, and sometimes for decades. And the idea is not a single event, as it is often being described. It is rather like a network. There are many dots, pieces of information, then they are collected, connected, and then there is a pattern that arises, and this pattern is suddenly realized in our brain by a combination of neurons that suddenly light up in the right configuration, and we call this an idea. And actually, when researchers went through Darwin's notebook, they found out that natural selection was in the notebook long before he realized that this is the case. And Einstein was thinking about relativity and the nature of light since he was a teenager, and the same is with Newton. There has been an interesting study done in a large number of laboratories. The aim of the study was to learn how discoveries are being made. So what these researchers did, they recorded the work at the lab for long periods, and then they analyzed them. And what they found was that the pattern of discoveries was very different from what we normally or naively think. They rarely saw people staring through the microscope and suddenly jumping with joy of revelation. Actually, what they found out that most of the discoveries were being made in the weekly meetings where the people reported what they found, they compared the notes, the mistakes, and then discuss with each other. That was actually the nature of discovery. Now, innovation is the top of agenda of every government, especially, Chinese ruling party understood a while ago that innovation is key to China's success, and therefore you see here many delegations coming to Tel Aviv University, and they have the goal to learn what is innovation. But what can we recommend for them? So innovation thrives when there is freedom. Free debates, engagement, creativity is being developed when you see things from different viewpoints. And when you are encouraging people to take risks and you allow them to make mistakes. And this is the culture here at Tel Aviv University. And today what we are going to hear in this session is a sample of the results of this culture. Let me introduce my co-chair, Dr. Stuart Feldman. Stuart is a chief scientist of the Schmidt Futures, where he's responsible for scientific knowledge programs, including creating fellowship programs, supporting innovative research projects, and driving new platforms and larger research projects. Stuart is both a mathematician and a physicist because he studied astrophysics and mathematics, earned his bachelor degree at Princeton and PhD at MIT. And he is well known to make many essential tools. He has been awarded various honorary doctorates, and he's sitting on National Academy panels and a wide variety of government advisory committees. So please, Stuart, now it's your turn.
Much, Yaron. Here, and let me just further embroider the comment on innovation. Einstein published 4 versions of the general theory of relativity in the month of November 1915 until he got it right. 4 versions a week apart because he was, rather than having a seminar with graduate students, it was with the Prussian Academy of Sciences, so of course somebody wrote it up and published it in hard text every week. It took 4 tries until he got the perfect covariant form. Research is like that too. The panel is something I'm looking forward to enormously. It represents an astonishing spread of what Tel Aviv University does, ranging from nanoparticles to jazz musicians in Brooklyn. And all of these are opportunities for new thinking, new opportunities. So I'm just going to very briefly summarize the 4 speakers, and then I'm really looking forward to seeing what new things they're going to talk about. First, Yael Hanein, who specializes in, as an electrical engineer, in printing nanoparticles and applying these to create strange nanotube configurations, nano antennas, new medical devices, of proto-retinas, an amazing set of applications for leading edge techniques. And as I looked at a couple of the papers, I must admit to having been thoroughly surprised that this stuff works, because it's so close to the edge of what people know how to do. It's looked great. And then we'll hear from Yossi Yovel, who runs the Bat Lab, which I had the privilege of visiting a couple of years ago. They build gadgets which weigh less than 2 grams, which is important because the bats only weigh 30 grams, and sort of a saddle for the poor things. However, in a device that size, they can do GPS, acceleration, record the chirping, and try to really understand the ecology, the sociology of bats, the social interactions of the nests and the foraging. Really amazing deductions from small beasts. And this is only possible by a cross-disciplinary activity ranging from ecology and biology to microelectronics. Amazing. And then we'll hear from Tali Hatuka from the Laboratory of Contemporary Urban Design, combining insights from everything from politics and sociology to ecology and environmental considerations, or what is the interaction between people and the built environment? What are the better ways to think about the built environment in a world of ecological stress? How the built environment interacts with modern politics. I'm looking forward to hearing more about such cross-disciplinary activity. And then Ofer Gazit, a musicologist who has been working on the culture of immigrant jazz musicians in Brooklyn. about as far intellectually as you might think as you could get from the first, and yet I'm looking forward to the cross connects here between music, musicology, and society. And I think all of these represent both the breadth of topics at Tau, but also the fact that every one of these breaks at least one and perhaps three discipline barriers in order to get somewhere excellent. So thank you. I look forward to hearing some wonderful, innovative presentations. Let me hand back to you.
Very good. Thank you, Stuart. And we'll begin with Professor Yael Hanein.
So, thank you very much for the opportunity and for the introduction. And it's always not me.
That's good.
So it's it's opportunity, but also clearly a challenge to describe to you essentially a scientific work, and therefore to do it properly, I want to start with these two images. So these are not taken from the internet. These are actually pictures that I've received from the parents of the toddler and the infant that you see here on the screen. That beautiful baby on the right is actually the daughter of one of my PhD students. And I'm using these two images to show and try to explain what is electrophysiology and why we as electrical engineer, actually physicists, I'm a physicist, care about electrophysiology. So in electrophysiology, what we do, we try to record the electrical activity that takes place in our body as we function. So when you think about electricity or electronic, you think about these devices, the lights, the computer, the microphone. But in fact, everything that you do, including everything, every activity that you do, including thinking, definitely moving your hands, breathing, your heartbeats, everything is basically associated with electrical activity that you can pick up and record and analyze. And as you can imagine, proper activity of a healthy individual would have certain proper manifestation, and dysfunctional activity would have a different manifestation that can be recorded. So on the case on the right, the mother of the baby is actually suffering from hearing impairment, and therefore it's very, very important to monitor whether a baby, a very young baby, few weeks of age, which cannot speak, can really tell whether she's hearing or not. And the way to do that is to expose her to an auditory signal and to see what's going past to the brain. And so this is what is done in this process. On the left-hand side, the example is a toddler who is apparently suffering from sleeping, bad sleep. And the motivation is really to record the electrical activity in the brain during sleep and to analyze sleep patterns. The reason why I'm showing these pictures is also to emphasize how poor the state of the art in this technology is. It's Stuart is laughing. This is really, in technological terms, this is pathetic, I would say. The technology hasn't changed for decades. It's a really, really, really bad technology. It means that electrodes fall, that the quality of the signals is very, very poor, and the worst thing is that you have to come to the hospital in order to do this measurement, whether it's a few-week-old baby, a toddler. This is 10 p.m. in the night. The father, as you can see, is completely exhausted. The kid is all hype and running, but this is not, and now he has to go to sleep with all these electrodes. So I hope I convince you there's a challenge there. So, well, what we did in order to resolve this challenge, so now the audio doesn't work again, we develop electrodes.
תראה עכשיו
Let me
פסנתר.
try still somehow to convince the audio to work. Can you help me with that?
תראה עכשיו פסנתר.
Well, anyhow, okay, so let's go back to the slide, and I'll try to replicate the auditory information. So the person you're seeing is Professor Anat Milman. She's my collaborator and a very, very good friend. She's the director. She has a very long title. She's the director of the Laboratory for Early Biomarkers and Neurodegeneration. What this really means is that she's working primarily with Parkinson's disease patients, not just, but primarily, and trying to identify as early as possible signals of the disease. And therefore, they've been looking all along for better technologies, how to interface with patients, overcoming the need to actually talk and receive a very subjective information about their condition. So what you're not hearing, maybe we will hear it, is her enthusiasm when she's testing the technology in our lab. And what you can see here is really the alternative which we developed, which instead of having all these wires, now we have a patch that is placed very, very quickly on the surface of the skin and allows for the electrical recording. Okay, now we hear her. Hopefully. You can hear. Nobody else can hear.
תראה עכשיו פסנתר.
Can you please put it?
תראה עכשיו פסנתר הפוך.
Okay.
איזה יופי, זה ממש מדליק.
Okay, so let's put it once more. The auditory part.
כן, אין איזה קפיצות, אין איזה משהו...
So what you see is the electrical signals now recorded with this
תראה עכשיו פסנתר.
Okay, so you see the signals, and the reason why this is very exciting is because Anat has been working with different technologies, including technologies that I've shown you before.
איזה יופי, זה ממש מדליק.
Okay, so,
זה מדליק.
okay. So what is the technology? So now instead of all these wires and all these connectors and all these big instrumentations, what we have instead is electrode patch that is adhered to any part of the body where we want to measure that electrical activity. That means that we can do either the EEG recording, which is the brain activity, the EOG activity, which is the movement of the eyes, or EMG activity, which is the electrical signals coming from activation muscles, and combination of all these things together. And the way we managed to do that was really by stepping out from the conventional domain of specific field and basically merging two entirely different fields, which is printing of flexible electronics and electrophysiology. And so the outcome is that we have now a technology which is really disruptive when it comes to electrophysiology, allowing basically to do recording when people are in their freely behaving state. So this is an example that I show often. This is how we can record facial expressions of a person while she's working. So again, no instrumentation, no hospital, no laboratory. This is our receptionist here at the Nano Center just across from us. She has this electrode arrays with a wireless system, and we are recording her facial expressions as she's working, okay? And this is extremely important when you want to see how people interact and what's the state of their behavior in their work environment. Clearly, we want people to be happy. We want to have people that can perform in the optimal conditions. We could monitor her and her environment with the surveillance camera, which we happen to have installed right there, and then we can pick up the different smiles that you see here. So there's also a lot of signal processing that we have to apply in order to eventually reach single muscle resolution and see what specific smile she's smiling. So in this particular example, we can see when she's genuinely smiling. So this is a smile where a person is really expressing true joy, and that means pulling up your these muscles here, but also contracting the muscles around your eyes. And some of you are actually performing these smiles right now, which is a good thing. On the other hand, you can perform this smile, which is just pulling up your muscles here without contracting the eyes. This is not such a nice smile. This is a smile that maybe is reserved for mingling events where you really have to smile, but you don't necessarily know the person or like the person. This one on the right is a really, really bad smile, because this is a smile where you're actually expressing resentment or even sneer. So you're sneering, you're pulling your nose, but you're hiding it with a smile. So this is a mask smile, and this is one of the worst things you can do. And we can pick it up. So this is a nice thing. And so the mathematical work is really about getting all this down to single muscle resolution. There are endless number of applications. This is just a snapshot of 4 from the neurological realm. As I showed you before, measuring sleep stages is very, very critical, and we can do it. We can do it at home. So this is hypnogram. It's a sleep analysis of sleep stages performed at home. So the person, with the assistance of the bed partner, can place the electrode, go to sleep, and we have the data for further analysis. We can do the emotional intelligence, as I've shown you just now. We're working with Professor Talma Hendler on neurofeedback, so you can record electrical signals from the brain, feed it back to music or other cues, and basically help people overcome conditions of anxiety, stress, and related, and record from the limbs in order to improve rehabilitation and neurological evaluation. And all these projects are ongoing, and this is even a partial list of the projects that we're working on. We, of course, had to do this work in collaboration with many, many people. Some of them you've seen, some are behind the scenes, and of course a lot of support, including 2 internal grants from the university, which were actually very, very helpful in promoting such collaborations. So I hope I demonstrated one type of innovation, and many, many thanks for your attention.
Excellent. Seeing the 21st century medicine being demonstrated. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Professor Yossi Yovel. Please.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm sure that you all know that bats use sound in order to see the world. In case somebody doesn't know, just very, very briefly, bats emit sound, like you see in this schematic. Sound comes out of their mouths, just like I'm talking right now. Echoes return from anything around them, and their brains are able to process this and do a lot of wonderful things. So instead of standing here and explaining mathematically or physically what bats can do, I prepared a short movie that demonstrates some of their abilities. We call this ability sonar, by the way, just in case somebody doesn't know the term, and I will use it. Okay, so many bats, hopefully you can see with the lights. So can we turn off the lights a little bit, maybe? Somebody can turn on the lights? No? Okay, let's keep going. So many bats, Yofi, toda. Oh. So that's international. So many bats capture insects using sonar. You see a bat now catching a moth using sound only. Look how it scoops it with its tail membrane. Bats are extremely important pesticides. So in the U.S., their benefits for agriculture is estimated by billions of dollars every year. This is a bat that catches fish over water, again using sound only, using sonar only. This is Central America right now. Some bats in Mexico, for example, southern USA as well, pollinate cacti. In this case, it's a saguaro cacti. These bats also pollinate the agave plants and bring you tequila. Without these bats, you would not have tequila. You can see here a mother flying with her pup. By the way, 50% of body weight. Try to fly with something that is 50% your body weight. In a second, you'll see one of the most fascinating problems, in my opinion, a bat that is catching a spider. How can this bat classify? How can it solve the problem? Say this is a spider based on the echo and not a leaf is something unknown for us, and there is nobody in the world, NASA, Google, Rafael, nobody can solve this problem so far. How do many, many bats move together is another big question, which we are also involved in studying. I'll say a few words about it later. Very relevant for autonomous vehicles, all moving together using similar frequency radar and interfering with each other. And this is just to remind you that bats are flying, the only flying mammals. Look how agile, look at the maneuverability. This is in the lab. So we hung something for this bat and it is going to now scoop it with its tail membrane. By the way, very, very small animals. This is a 6-gram animal that you see in front of you. So the size of your pinky or whatever it's called. Okay, so this is what bats can do. What can we do? So in the past few years, we've been involved in several projects related to agriculture. Precision agriculture and robotics, which I never dreamt that I will ever be doing something like this. We joined some collaborators in the Volcani Institute, and my collaborators who are experts on robotics and agriculture told me that there are many, many unsolved problems in precision agriculture. Here is just one example that we tried to tackle in the last few years, the question of yield assessment. So we are now in a pepper greenhouse, and apparently there is no good way, nothing based on camera or laser or anything else can solve the problem of saying how many peppers are in this greenhouse, what is the weight of the total amount of peppers in this greenhouse. Of course, this is relevant to many, many other types of crops, but we tried it on peppers, which are at the time were very big in Israel, in the south, in the Arava, maybe you know this. And the reason, in 2 words, why is this so difficult? So you can see it here. The fruit have the same color as the leaves often, so very hard to use a camera to solve this problem, unless you're using a very, very expensive camera. And the fruit is often embedded within the leaf. So, using vision, it's hard to see what's going on inside the plant. Okay, so again, Avital and I tried to use sonar, bat-like sonar, so we mimic the bat's sounds. We look at the echoes and we try to analyze them, to process them, and to say whether we can assess the amount of fruit. Here are 2 examples of robots that we build in order to do this. So this is a robotic arm in the lab. It's moving around and using sound to search a plant and approach it once it finds it. These robots have no vision, so they're completely blind. They only use sound. You see now an autonomous robotic vehicle moving again using sound only. This is the botanical garden in Tel Aviv University. When it will turn, you see this robot just approach the plant. This could be relevant in the future, for example, for automatic picking of fruit. Now it turned around so you can see its head. So this is the mouth of our robot, and these are the 2 ears. Okay, so it has a speaker in front, emitting sound just like a bat, receiving echoes just like bats do. And did we succeed? So if we hadn't succeeded, I wouldn't show this to you. But here are our results. This is again for for a greenhouse with peppers. We're now working, as we speak, we're working on grapes and dates, which are big agriculture crops in Israel. And you can see here the predicted fruit weight. So we take a plant, each point here is a plant. We say according to our algorithm, there is 750 grams of fruit on this plant. And you can see here the actual measurement. And you can see that we are quite accurate. How do we do this? So we use machine learning and sophisticated statistical algorithms. And it will be very hard to explain. But I just want to give you some intuition. This is going to be loud, so I'll make it a bit softer. Just want to give you a bit of intuition. How can we take an echo of a plant and say something about this plant, okay? So you see here, these are images that depict sound, okay? We have frequency on the y-axis, time on the x-axis, and the intensity of the sound is depicted by the color. So more red is more intense, and you can see the names of the trees. You can see the trees down here, and I just want to play back a sample. So just for your ears to get an intuition of what a plant sounds like, I'll play back the echo of let's say maybe if I press, I play back the echo of an apple tree to you. Of course, I had to manipulate the sound because this is all in ultrasound, but in order for you to hear it, I manipulated the sound. This is an apple tree. I think I can make it a little bit louder. And this is a cornfield. It's not popcorn. Sometimes people say, it sounds like popcorn. It's not popcorn, it's a cornfield. Sounds completely different, right? I know some of you say, no, it sounds, we could never tell the difference, but I assure you, I did this test many times. I can ask you to close your eyes now and play back one of them, and you will know. Here, let's run a small test. Which one is this one? You see, everybody's now trying to recognize corn based on sound. Why is this so? What's the intuition behind it? You can hear that the corn sound signal is segmented. It's broken into pieces. Where's my mouse? Over here. You can see it also in the image. You see where I'm pointing. These are the rows of corn. And this is also very important because you can see that sound waves travel into the plant, okay, or into the field in this case. We can see the first row, second row, third and fourth row of corn, something that is very, very difficult to do with vision, as I argued before. So this is part of the reason why we are doing better than using cameras. Of course, in the future, the near future, we hope to work in a swarm of robots, okay? So bats do not work as individuals. Some bats, at least, don't work as individuals. They work in groups, sometimes with many, many individuals solving the problems together. And this is a robot that we are currently building, a small swimming robot mimicking a bat. You can see here a mathematical simulation showing how a group of robots or bat-like robots move together. Our aim is to have, instead of this single robot moving through the greenhouse or the field or whatever, to have a swarm of robots working together, or maybe I should say a group of robots working together, hopefully at some point even flying together and not only moving on the ground together. I want to switch gears now, and I'm going to talk a little bit about bats, and not so much about how we mimic them, but what do we do in order to understand them, and why is it important? So if you want to understand how bats work in a group, you also have to look into their social communication, their language, okay? So they have sonar, that's how they sense the world. They also have a language. And in 2 recent studies, we've shown that if you go into a bat cave, actually there's one not far away from here, and I think some of you came with me 2 years ago to a bat cave, you hear a cacophony. It sounds like a lot of noise, everybody's shouting at each other, and we were asking ourselves whether there is information, whether it's just shouting or whether you can translate it into something. We used algorithms similar to the ones you have in your cell phone, so again, machine learning, very heavy statistical algorithms, and we showed, and this is just a popular publication about this, we showed that you can actually build a translator. You can take a bat call and say, what is this bat talking about? Is it talking about food? Is it talking about sleep? Is it talking about sex? All of these we were able to tell apart. In another study, we also showed that bats learn their language. Okay, they're not born. So most animals are born with their language. It doesn't matter if they're exposed to adults, they will eventually, I will use the term speak, although some people, if there are scientists here, they might get a bit nervous, but they will then speak with the same language, even if they were not exposed to adult language. We showed that with bats, this is not the case. We were able to create in the lab different groups of bats with different dialects. Okay, so we reared bats with different dialects, bats that speak with an English accent from Glasgow versus bats that speak with an English accent from London. Really, that's more or less the interpretation of what we did. So, as was mentioned already, part of what we do in order to study these bats in the wild, outdoors, is to build these tiny sensors that can be placed on them. This is a 2-gram circuit that has a GPS. As you can see over here, it has a GPS. It has the ability to record EEG brainwaves, like Yael just explained. It has a camera. It has a microphone. It has an accelerometer. By the way, it has to be so small because bats are so small. So this over here is the smallest mammal on Earth. It's a 2-gram bat. Okay, it's the smallest mammal on Earth. Its brain is maybe 0.1 grams. You know, people ask me sometimes if they are intelligent. So here is a mammal with a brain the size of, I don't know, the tip of this pen over here, which can navigate over 100 kilometers. It can use sound to do so. It can recognize other individuals in the colony. So is it intelligent, or are we not intelligent perhaps? I don't know. It's a good question. And I want to show you how we use this system in order to do something that is related to bat conservation. Okay, not so much to technology, but how do we help bats? So what we did in addition to developing this technology is to establish the first academic bat colony in the world. So here in Tel Aviv University, maybe some of you have visited, we have a colony of bats that roost in the university. They have to be at least undergraduate students, otherwise they're not accepted. And they are free. They do whatever they want. And what does this allow us? So I will show you now the first 50 nights in the life of a bat from our colony. and each night is a different color. The colors move from blue to red. This is one individual. Note how it moves around university. So university is over here, and sometimes it performs these very long exploration flights, moves sometimes 30, 40 kilometers away, scanning the environment, learning how to map the environment. We can do many, many things with this very unique data. It's the first time, to my knowledge, that anybody has the full information about the life of a mammal, of a wild mammal outdoors. And what we found, and this would be relevant to conserving these bats in the future, is that there is a big difference between the behavior of bats in the city and between rural bats. So country bats and city bats. What's the difference? In 2 words, country bats are boring. Okay, maybe it doesn't surprise you. They live, here's an example of one individual. It leaves the roost, the cave, every night. These are different nights in different colors. It flies 30 kilometers to the same tree, night after night, doing the same thing. So, you know, in Hebrew we say, I like to say, it's like a kibbutznik, like a boring kibbutznik, goes to the same, I hope I'm not offending anybody, goes to the same bar again and again, every night, you know, not many opportunities, while the city bat, and this surprised us, I didn't expect to see this, although today it seems obvious to me, is a bar hopper, okay? Look at this city bat. This is its roost. It moves to northern Tel Aviv. Sometimes it moves to Herzliya. Sometimes it goes to the seaport in Herzliya. And even within one night, it will hop from one place to the other. Why is this important for, except for it being very interesting in my opinion, why is it important for conserving bats? Because now we understand their needs, right? We don't know how much space do they need. When we establish a new nature reserve, we don't know how much space to dedicate to different things. We need this type of information. Final thing about this project, when seeing these very different behaviors, we are wondering whether we can find differences in their brains, because we know that the brain is very, very plastic. It changes according to what we do. And therefore, we took 30 bats of each group. We put them in an MRI machine here in Tel Aviv University. You know, MRI is non-invasive. You can put the bats, you scan them, then you release them back in the wild. And indeed, we find differences in areas, in brain areas that are related to navigation, like the hippocampus, in brain areas that are related to fear, like the amygdala. Generally, you know, if I try to generalize, city bats are much less hesitant than rural bats. They dare more, they will do things that rural bats will not. In the last 2 minutes that I have, I want to show you 2, I think, very exciting projects, very interdisciplinary projects that we were involved in, and are not related to bats. They're related to my work with sound, with bioacoustics, but not to bats. So for years, there's this question whether plants can hear, right? We know that plants can sense light and gravitation and gravity, and many, many other types of energy out there. But there's a big question whether bats can hear for sure, whether plants can hear. And together with 2 scientists in the plant science department, Lilach Hadani and Yovel Sapir, we showed that this flower, at least, can hear its pollinators. So if you take a speaker, a sound speaker, and you play back the sound of a moth, what is the sound of a moth? When a moth flies, its wings flutter and it makes sounds. And if you play back the sound of a moth to this flower, within 3 minutes, it will increase its sugar concentration in its nectar. So it is rewarding the moth. That's our interpretation. In order for, you know, the moth is a pollinator, it wants it to remain longer. So again, together with Lilach and Yovel, they really led the project. We only did the acoustics. And something that we are working on these days, again, very interdisciplinary, together with Amir Ayali in biology, who works on locusts, on insects, and Ben Maoz in engineering, who builds these tiny microchips. What we did is what we're doing, actually, it's a new project, we're still working on it. The idea is to build a robot that integrates biological parts into it in order to be better. So it's a hybrid, basically. What we do is we take the ear of a locust. Maybe you're surprised to hear that locusts can hear, but they have these ears which are much better than anything we can build in this side. And then, so this is Amir Ayali's part, and then we put it in a microchip that can sustain it for, at the moment, 24 hours, in the future, maybe, hopefully more. This is Ben Maoz's part. And then we embed all of this in a robot, so we have a robot reading the electrical signals coming from the ear, and the processor of the robot, that's my part, is now learning to use these signals in order to navigate in the world. So maybe in the future, your vacuum cleaning robot will have these tiny locust ears and these moth antennae, and I don't know, what else? I have to thank a lot of students that allow me to speak, to stand here and speak, because they actually do all of the work. So this is our team, a lot of engineers, biologists, physicists, computer scientists, who all come to work together on these projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a great idea to increase the undergraduate number of students in Tel Aviv, undergraduate bets. Okay. next, Professor Tali Hatuka about the new industrial age, cities in revolution, please.
Okay.
Amazing.
Great. So thank you for having me here. It's a great pleasure to talk a little bit about what we are doing, and I'm very happy that both Yossi and Yael were talking before me, because I will be talking about the problems that this great technology and innovation create, and the challenges we face as society and the challenges that cities nowadays face. So as a very short introduction, let's see a very short movie, 1-minute movie, on the progress of humanity over the last 100 years, since the first industrial revolution. So we will talk about the fourth industrial revolution and its influence on cities and societies. So now, the light, please, that would be helpful. So this is a nice reminder to what has been achieved over the last 100 years. So I think that what was at the end of this movie is the key question for us: how all this technology, robotics, that requires skilled labor, will not create a world of jobless people and inequality. And for us, one of the key questions is, okay, next. Okay, so we saw speed, technology, artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicle, all these things are great, but it will dramatically influence our employment patterns, lifestyles, and also social equality. So is society prepared for Industry 4? I think each one of us have to ask himself this question. Are cities ready for Industry 4? As a planner and an architect, I can say not really. Not yet. So for us, one of the key questions as planners that work in the academic world and thinking about the new models and how cities need to embrace this in a way that will support society, we have both to think about the preparation, but also the response and the support for society. So over the last 8 years, I've been engaged in numerous different projects that looks at the relationship between technology, industry, and cities. I could say that I can divide this project into two key categories: projects that are focused on city development and projects that are focusing on social development. For today, I'm going to introduce only one project that I've been working on for the last 8 years with MIT, and it is called Industrial Urbanism. And I'm working with Professor Ran Ben Joseph, and this is something that hopefully will come up as a book next year. But not just books and papers. The key questions for us in this project is, are cities ready? And as I said, not really. We have to look to understand this at the relationship between the industry and cities. So historically, you saw the first industrial revolution was focused on water and steam power. The city was not ready. So industry was scattered all over, pollution, hygiene problems, and this resulted in a response to the second industrial revolution with a different model, that is separating between industry and cities. In the 70s, with the computerization, we had a new model in planning. This is the industrial parks, the eco-industrial parks. But nowadays, we know that all these models are not really supporting what we are facing now, the new advanced digitization that actually pushes us, all of us, to a different lifestyle, much more quicker. And we are now thinking about a hybrid model, a model that will bring back manufacturing and industry back to the city. Do we know how to do it? So this is the question mark. Not really. What do we know? So first, if we look at this slide, you can see the evolution. So you can see that each phase has a response from the planning and the spatial development approach. But there are a lot of questions, and there is a big question mark on what is the next phase. But what we do know, we have some ideas. We know that there are key concepts that are changing already cities. In a nutshell, we can say that digitization, ecosystems, and environment are going to be the key issues that will influence the development of cities. We know that proximity is becoming a major issue. So cities are going to shrink, not just because they want to be compact and ecological, but also because the lifestyle and the industrial development will influence it. We know that community and localism is going to be a major issue in the development of cities. So universities, ecosystems, but not just universities, ecosystems that also create clusters that focus on the community institutions are going to be a key thing. And planning, we'll have to adjust. Planning is a very slow, anachronistic discipline. This will definitely change in the next decade. So, but for us as researchers, it's not just how to respond to Industry 4, but how to use Industry 4 as a catalyst to regenerate cities and region. And I think that what we try to do at MIT is to use Industry 4 to kind of reinvent some of the actually poor, unsuccessful regions in Israel, but also elsewhere. So I will just give you an example of what we are doing right now. We did a different project, but this is a very interesting project. We were called by the Ministry of Economy and the Ministry of Interior to think about Kiryat Shmona. No doubt, tough region. As one of the people there said to me, I'm talking more with Hezbollah and Nasrallah than with Benjamin Netanyahu. So very dramatic area. And they have beautiful scenery, no doubt, but they also have something else. They have a vision. And they have industrial vision that focus on food tech and agri-tech. So, and more than that, the government support them. And then they have all these existing blocks. They map their existing blocks of the agro and food tech system. They map the powers in academia, accelerators, and industry. And what else? They need to think about the environment, how cities, how schools, how education will support their vision. So our role is to respond to the question, what needs to be done? So vision is important, but then you have to find the way to fulfill it. So what we do in this project, we take some of our ideas that we have in our models that I didn't have enough time to talk about it, and try to implement it in Kiryat Shmona, to link the industrial vision to spatial development and to think about it in a new, updated 21st century way. Otherwise, if they will continue the way they are, there is no doubt that they will not be successful. So we think about food tech clusters, how they need to be developed. We think about transportation. We think about new topologies of housing, how residential and industry could be combined, and so forth. So why do we do all this? I really prefer to do my research with my MIT colleague, but first, knowledge transfer, no doubt. We do it also in other cities. We did it for Ashdod and Kiryat Gat. And also, we really hope to bridge the gap between academia and practice. And for us, the vision is actually trying to look ahead. We know today that cities and regions must update their vision and focus on industry, planning, and education. This kind of triangle is really crucial. And then I think that we have to remember, as we saw early in my presentation in the film, that we can never go back. And this is the good thing and bad thing, but we really have to think how we can avoid a world of joblessness, low productivity, and inequality. And the only way we can do it is also thinking about the consequences that it brings about. So hopefully I will be able to open a new center next year with the support of some of the ministries, focusing on both innovation, basic research that develop new models, because obviously we cannot have just one model, and also on implementation. I will just leave you with this slide and this quote: effective policy works on the boundaries between dream and reality, linking deep needs and obscure desire to open experience and test. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we feel like singing a little. Singing a Home, Music and Social Action by Dr. Ofer Gazit, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I just want to clarify, I'm not going to be talking about jazz. I'm saying I'm not going to be talking about jazz musicians in Brooklyn today, but another very exciting city, Petah Tikva, just as exciting, exactly. Okay. So what I want to talk to you today is how musical performance and social action can be developed through research. So what we did is we designed a seminar class for our graduate students that the main reason for that seminar was to help students acquire basic research methodologies in my field of ethnomusicology. If you don't know what ethnomusicology, think of musicology, combine it with anthropology, and that's basically it. And so we collaborated with the community outreach program that's part of the Dean of Students here at the university, and with a nonprofit called Makor, which operates a small music room in Petah Tikva, which is a city about 30 minutes, depending on traffic from here. And what we did was that we tried to, at one hand, address issues that relate to inequality in access to music education on one hand, and allow our students to really have an impact in their research, even in the very early stages as they are learning how to employ these tools. So we came into the idea of doing this research with looking at previous research and seeing that the community that we are talking about, these are mainly 10 to 15-year-old Ethiopian Israeli youth that are being served in this youth center. And we started looking at the literature, and the literature basically said that mostly what Ethiopian Israeli youth is interested in is hip-hop, performers like Tupac Shakur. I don't know if you know the names, but this is about 35 years ago. This was the big names in hip-hop, and Bob Marley, so reggae. And that this indicates that there is an association with an African diasporic identity. Okay, so this sense of community relating to an African diasporic music that's coming from the Caribbean or from the US. And we said, that sounds interesting, but a bit reductive. And we wanted to see what happens, not when we ask youth what they listen to, but what happens when we ask them what they wanted to perform, to play. And we used a simple method. The method is taken from a previous research that I did with immigrants in New York City. It takes the jam session, the jazz jam session, and looks at it as a little, as a research platform, meaning that if I'm in a jam session and I want to perform a piece, I need to know what other people know how to play. I need to have the right instruments, and so there's a negotiation. Some person says, oh, do you know how to play this song? And I might say, I do, or I don't like that song, or any other kind of response can happen. I might say, I don't know how to play it, can you show me? And so this dialogue was the research foundation for the kind of interaction that we wanted to have with the youth in the center in Petah Tikva. And we basically met in Petah Tikva with the seminar every week for 4 hours. First half of the seminar was dedicated to talking about, first of all, the basic research tools of ethnomusicology. So how to create a recording, how to transcribe music, writing it in notation, how to do research in an ethical and responsible way. Further on in the semester, we talked about things that relate to migration and social mobility, issues that relate to specifically the migrations from Ethiopia in '84 and in the '70s, and talked about the positioning of Ethiopian Israelis as it's coming out in news media and in various contemporary news outlets. And so once we covered that part and had a good sense, a grounded understanding of the situation we're in, we would go back into the bigger classroom and have the young youth that come in and take place in the, enjoy the space there, and begin this negotiation of what kind of music do you want to play. And so every moment that a student or a youth chooses a song tells you something about what they know, what they feel confident in, what they feel like they can express in this context. And the answers were very diverse. We had students and youth choosing to play together Israeli rock songs, Israeli hip-hop. There's a big movement now with Ethiopian hip-hop in Hebrew that is happening. Bands like KGC, you should check them out if you don't know. Or Cafe Shachol Chazak, Strong Black Coffee, another very popular band. So the youth expressed what they're interested in performing and acquiring the skills needed to do that. And so at that point, the groups break into individual teams of a student and a youth, and they work and practice the song. And they learn how to perform it together. This allows the students to practice the research tools that we've been talking about, and the youth to actually learn and develop the skill needed to perform an instrument. So they had a choice between piano, drums, guitar, bass, and vocals, and cello, which you might see here at some point. Yeah. Okay, and so our these sessions were basically the foundation of the research, the fieldwork research that our students did. And they came up with very interesting results to this research. First of all, obviously they realized that contrary to the research that exists, the taste and the ways that youth identifies with music is much more complicated and diverse to just saying, okay, hip-hop and reggae, and identifying with some African diasporic identity. So there were contexts in which Israeli rock and Hebrew were considered the most relevant and the most interesting, most close to their heart. There were moments where, as I mentioned, Israeli Ethiopian hip-hop was the most engaging to them. And each moment and each aspect of their life required and suggested a different kind of musical taste depending on social interactions that they had with their parents, with their siblings, with their friends. And what we, I'll give you another example of a student paper that looked at the ways that different youth used silsul, ma'awal. So it's a different kind of inflection of the voice. It's a vocal technique that you need to practice and develop in order to sing in a particular genre called Mizrahi music. Okay, this is probably the most. And so, just to conclude this part, because I'm getting cut off. So I just wanted to mention that what the results of the projects were, that we were able to produce an album. There was a live concert here at the university, at the Buchmann-Mehta School of Music. If you know that institution, you're going to hear the performance on Saturday by the symphonic orchestra of the school. And we're able to record it, create an album, create a song book with the music and the song. And I wanted to play to you okay, so I'm going to play to you an original song written by two of the girls that were working with us in the project, Tali and Hatuka, and this is an original song composed and written lyrics also.
אני חושבת יותר מדי, היום הזה כבד עליי כל כך. כמה זמן זה יימשך, אתה בא ואז הולך, והכל שוב מסתבך עכשיו. ובא לי לצעוק את זה, שתשמע ותתגלה.
I just want to say thank you. I collaborated on this project with Michal Grover-Friedlander, who couldn't be here today, so I just wanted to say that in addition.
As usual, there is a lunch waiting, so we will not have questions and answers, but the speakers will be around during lunch. Okay, thank you.